The stale air of our once sacred bedroom hung heavy with the scent of cheap perfume and unspoken lies. Alaric, an IT specialist of 46 years, stood frozen, the blood draining from my face as I stared at the message on my wife's phone, a message that shattered my world. Can't wait to be alone with you again, my love. This house is so boring without you. It was signed, Kellen. My wife Bront had always been a whirlwind of energy, a vibrant artist who filled our suburban home in Philadelphia with color and life. Or so I thought. We'd been married for 18 years. 18 years of what I believed to be unwavering love and commitment. Now, that foundation crumbled beneath my feet like sand. The suspicion had been gnawing at me for weeks. Bront's late nights at the studio, her increasingly distant demeanor, the way she flinched when I touched her, all subtle signs that I had foolishly ignored, blinded by my trust and love. I had attributed it to stress, to the pressures of her art career. I had been so wrong. I had accidentally picked up her phone thinking it was mine. Our phones were the same model, a simple mistake. But that mistake unveiled a truth that would forever alter the course of my life, Kellen. The name echoed in my mind, a stranger who had somehow infiltrated our lives, our marriage. I didn't recognize the name. Who was he? What was his connection to Bront? My hands trembled as I scrolled through the messages, each one a dagger twisting in my heart. They spoke of stolen moments, secret rendezvous, and a passion that was clearly absent in our marriage. The sickening realization washed over me. Bront was having an affair. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My breath hitched in my throat. I felt a crushing weight on my chest, a suffocating sense of betrayal. How could she do this to me? How could she betray our vows, our family, our life together? I sank onto the edge of the bed, the phone slipping from my numb fingers. The room swam before my eyes, the familiar surroundings now alien and hostile. The photographs on the dresser, the paintings on the walls, the very furniture seemed to mock me, reminders of a life that was now tainted, irrevocably damaged. I needed to confront her. I needed answers, but I was paralyzed by a mixture of rage, grief, and disbelief. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted it to be a nightmare, a cruel trick of the mind. But the messages were undeniable, the truth staring me in the face. I spent the next few hours in a daze, pacing the house like a caged animal. I replayed our years together in my mind, searching for clues, for signs that I had missed. Had I been so blind, so complacent? Had I failed her in some way? No. I had been a good husband. I had supported her dreams, celebrated her successes, and comforted her in her failures. I had been loyal, honest, and devoted. I had given her my heart, my soul, my everything, and she had repaid me with betrayal. Bront arrived home late that evening, her face flushed, her eyes bright. She greeted me with a peck on the cheek and a casual, "Hey, honey. How was your day?" I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. How could she act so normal, so nonchalant? Did she think she could continue to deceive me, to live this double life without consequence? "Bront, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to remain composed. She frowned, her eyes narrowing slightly. "About what?" I held up her phone, the screen displaying the incriminating message. "About this." Her face paled, the color draining from her cheeks. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape route. She knew she had been caught. "Alaric, I can explain," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Explain. Explain how you could betray me, our marriage, our family. Explain who Kellen is and why you're telling him you can't wait to be alone with him in our house." My voice rose with each word, fueled by the burning anger that consumed me. She began to cry, tears streaming down her face. "It just happened, Alaric. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It just happened," I repeated, incredulous. "You didn't mean for it to go this far. You've been having an affair, Bront. This isn't some casual flirtation. This is a deliberate act of betrayal," she sobbed uncontrollably, burying her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry, Alaric. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did hurt me, Bront," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You shattered my trust. You destroyed our marriage. How can I ever forgive you for this?" She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "Please, Alaric. Give me a chance to make it up to you. I'll do anything, anything," I scoffed. "Is there anything you wouldn't do, Bront? Would you have told me about this if I hadn't found out? Would you have continued to lie to me, to live this double life?" She didn't answer. Her silence spoke volumes. I turned away from her, unable to bear the sight of her tears, her feigned remorse. "I need some time to think," I said, my voice flat. "I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight." I packed a bag, my hands shaking, my mind reeling. As I walked out the door, I glanced back at Braunt, who was still sobbing on the couch. I felt a pang of sadness, a flicker of the love I once had for her. But it was quickly extinguished by the burning anger and the overwhelming sense of betrayal. The next few days were a blur. I stayed in a sterile hotel room, trying to make sense of what had happened. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't think straight. I was consumed by anger, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. I consulted with a lawyer who advised me on my options. Divorce seemed inevitable, but I wanted to ensure that I was protected, that I didn't lose everything I had worked so hard for. I also hired a private investigator. I needed to know everything about Kellen. Who was he? What was his relationship with Braunt? And how long had this been going on? The investigator quickly uncovered some disturbing information. Kellen was a struggling artist, a young and ambitious proc of Braunt's. He had been working with her at her studio for the past 6 months, and according to the investigator, their affair had been going on for at least 3 months. But that wasn't the worst of it. The investigator also discovered that Kellen was living in our guest house. Our guest house, the one we had built for visiting family and friends. Braunt had not only betrayed me, but she had also brought her lover into our home under my very nose. The rage that surged through me was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I felt like I could explode. How could she be so callous, so disrespectful, so utterly devoid of empathy? I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to confront them. I needed to see them face to face and let them know the extent of their betrayal. I drove to our house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Kellen's car parked in front of the guest house. The sight of it sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through me. I stormed out of my car and marched towards the guest house, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't bother to knock. I simply kicked the door open, the force of my blow sending it crashing against the wall. Braunt and Kellen were inside, sitting on the couch, their faces etched with guilt and surprise. They scrambled to their feet, their eyes wide with fear. "What the hell is going on here?" I roared, my voice shaking with rage. Braunt tried to speak, but I cut her off. "Don't even try to explain, Braunt. I know everything. I know about your affair. I know about Kellen. And I know that you've been hiding him in our guest house, right under my nose." Kellen stepped forward, his eyes defiant. "This is between Braunt and me," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "This is between you and me too, you little weasel," I snarled, advancing towards him. "You think you can waltz into my life, steal my wife, and get away with it?" I grabbed him by the collar, my grip tightening. He tried to wriggle free, but I held him firm. "Alaric, stop it!" Braunt screamed, trying to pull me away. "You're going to hurt him good," I said, my eyes burning with anger. "That's exactly what I want to do." I shoved Kellen against the wall, my fist raised. But before I could strike him, I hesitated. I looked at his face, his youthful features contorted with fear. I saw a reflection of myself, a man who had been blinded by love and desire, a man who had made a terrible mistake. I lowered my fist, my anger slowly subsiding. I realized that violence wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't undo the betrayal, it wouldn't heal my broken heart. It would only make me feel worse. I released Kellen, who stumbled backwards, his eyes still wide with fear. "Get out," I said, my voice low and menacing. "Get out of my house and out of my life. And if I ever see you again, I'll make you regret the day you were born." Kellen didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled out of the guest house and ran to his car, his face pale with terror. He sped away, leaving Braunt and me alone. I turned to Braunt, my eyes filled with sadness and disappointment. "I'm done, Braunt," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't do this anymore. I'm filing for divorce." She burst into tears, collapsing onto the couch. "Please, Alaric, don't do this. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make it up to you." "It's too late, Braunt," I said, shaking my head. "You've broken my trust. You've destroyed our marriage. There's no going back." I walked out of the guest house, leaving her sobbing on the couch. I didn't look back. I knew that this was the end. The end of our marriage, the end of our life together. I filed for divorce the next day. The process was long and painful, but I was determined to get through it. I couldn't let Braunt's betrayal ruin my life. I moved out of our house and into a small apartment in the city. I focused on my work, immersing myself in coding and algorithms. I started exercising, going to the gym every day to relieve stress and clear my head. I also started seeing a therapist. I needed to talk about what had happened, to process my emotions, and to learn how to trust again. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Braunt didn't contest it. She knew she had made a mistake, a terrible mistake. She had lost everything: her husband, her home, her reputation. I didn't take everything from her. I didn't want to be vindictive. I simply wanted to move on with my life. I never saw Kellen again. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had moved to another city, chasing his artistic dreams. I didn't care. He was no longer a part of my life. It took me a long time to heal. The scars of betrayal ran deep. But I was determined to move forward, to rebuild my life, to find happiness again. I started dating again, cautiously at first. I was wary of getting hurt again, of trusting someone new. But eventually I met someone special. Her name was Isolde. She was kind, compassionate, and honest. She was everything Braunt wasn't. We fell in love slowly, deliberately. We built our relationship on trust, communication, and mutual respect. 2 years later, Isolde and I got married. It was a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by our closest friends and family. As I stood at the altar, looking into Isolde's eyes, I knew that I had finally found happiness again. I had survived Braunt's betrayal, I had healed my broken heart, and I had found true love. But the story doesn't end there. A few years later, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a picture. A picture of Braunt, looking haggard and worn, standing in front of a pawn shop. In her hands, she held one of her paintings, the very paintings that had once adorned our home. The message read, "Kellen left me. He took all my money and ran off with another woman. I've lost everything." "I'm sorry, Alaric." I stared at the picture, a strange mix of emotions swirling within me. Sadness, pity, and a touch of vindication. I didn't reply to the message. I didn't offer her any help. She had made her choices, and she had to live with the consequences. I showed the picture to Isolde, who simply shook her head and said, "Karma." And she was right. Karma had finally caught up with Braunt. Her betrayal had not only destroyed our marriage, but it had also destroyed her life. I didn't rejoice in her misfortune. I simply felt a sense of closure. I had moved on, I had found happiness again, and Braunt's actions no longer had any power over me. I deleted the picture from my phone and turned to Isolde, my heart filled with love and gratitude. I knew that I had made the right choice, that I had found my soulmate. And as I looked into her eyes, I knew that I would never let anyone betray me again. I had learned my lesson. Trust is a precious gift, and it should never be taken for granted. This is my story. A story of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately redemption. A story that I hope will serve as a warning to others, a reminder that the choices we make have consequences and that true love is worth fighting for. And to you, the reader, remember this. Protect your heart, choose wisely, and never let anyone dim your light. Your happiness is worth fighting for. Never settle for less than you deserve.